I'd like for us all to go on a ghost hunt. And to get to where we're going, let's walk with our hands slapping our legs. And if you have to jump, jump real high with your hands way up in the air. That's good. And if you hear anything, kind of put your hand up to your ear and listen real careful. And I'll say the words and you can do the actions with me. Once upon a Halloween night, there was a brave little girl. And she said to all of her friends, I'm going out to find me a ghost. So she started out walking. She creaked open the gate. And she slammed it shut. And she kept on walking. But she hadn't walked far till she heard a cat. But no ghost, so she kept on walking. Soon she came to a bridge and she walked across it. And she kept on walking. But she hadn't walked far till she heard an owl. Hoot, hoot, hoot. Still no ghost, so she kept on walking. Soon she came to a ditch. She couldn't step across it, so she said, I'll just jump it. So she backed up, and she started to run faster and faster, and she jumped the ditch, and she kept on walking. Soon she came to a swamp, so she jumped in, and she waded across. She jumped out, and she kept on walking. Right through some mud, out of that mud, and she started up Graveyard Hill. There it was, a big old scary ghost. Ah, she ran down that hill. She ran through the mud. Out of that mud, she jumped into the swamp and she waded across it. She jumped out and she ran on. She jumped across the ditch and she ran on. She heard an owl, ooh, but she ran on. She ran across that bridge and she ran on. She heard a cat, meow, but she ran on. She ran through the gate, slammed it shut, and she said, I saw a ghost. And all of her Halloween friends said, boo. And that's the story of the ghost hunt. Thank you.
Fair Margaret ran in the merry green wood, and pulled a flower but one, when at her side stood young Tamerlane, saying, Margaret, leave it alone. How dare you pull my flowers, madam? How dare you break my tree? How dare you run in these green woods without the leave of me?
Oh, this green wood, it is my own. My father gave it me, and I can pluck myself a flower without the leave of thee.
He took her by the milk-white hand, and by the grass-green sleeve, and laid her low down on the flowers, and asked of her no leave. And when he'd had his will of her, young Margaret, she felt shame, says, if you are a gentleman, pray tell to me your name. Oh, Tamerlane is the name he said, the elf queen gave to me, and long I've haunted these green woods, all for your fair body. So do not pluck that herb, Margaret, that herb that grows so grey, for that would kill the little babe that we've got in our play. When I was a boy, just turned of 9, my uncle sent for me to hunt and hawk and ride with him and keep him company. Oh, drowsy, drowsy as I was, dead sleep upon me fell, and the Queen of Elfin she rode by and took me for herself. Tonight it is good Halloween, the elfin court will ride, and they that would their true love win, at the crossroads they must hide. The second court that comes along is clad in robes of green, it is the head court of them all, for in it rides the Queen, and I upon a milk-white steed, with a gold star in my crown, and I do ride beside the Queen, and you must pull me down. Then I will grow in your 2 arms, like a savage creature wild, but hold me fast, let me not go, I'm the father of your child. She took her petticoats in her hand, her mantle on her arm, and to the crossroads she's away, as fast as she could run. The first court it came riding by, she heard the bridles ring, and the second court all dressed in green, and tumbling like a king. She pulled him from his milk-white steed, he on the ground did lay, and the elf queen gave a shrieking cry, young Tamerlane's away, me boys, young Tamerlane's away. And then they turned him in her arms, to a wolf and to an adder, she held him fast in every shape, to be her baby's father. They shaped him in her arms at last, a mother naked man. She wrapped him in her mantle green, and so her true love won. Out then cried the elfin queen, and an angry woman was she, said you've stolen away the fairest knight in all my company. Oh, had I known, Tamerlane, she says, what now this night I see, I would have burned out your 2 grey eyes, and put into from a tree, Tamerlane, and put into from a tree.
It was settled, therefore, in her own mind, that the Scarecrow should represent a fine gentleman of the period, so far as the materials at hand would allow. Perhaps it may be as well to enumerate the chief of the articles that went to the composition of this figure. The most important item of all, probably, although it made so little show, was a certain broomstick, on which Mother Rigby had taken many an airy gallop at midnight, and which now served the Scarecrow by way of a spinal column, or, as the unlearned phrase it, a backbone. One of its arms was a disabled flail, which used to be wielded by Goodman Rigby, before his spouse worried him out of this troublesome world. The other, if I mistake not, was composed of the pudding stick and a broken rung of a chair, tied loosely together at the elbow. As for its legs, the right was a hoe handle, and the left an undistinguished and miscellaneous stick from the woodpile. Its lungs, stomach, and other affairs of that kind were nothing better than a meal-bag stuffed with straw. Thus we have made out the skeleton and entire corporosity of the Scarecrow, with the exception of its head. And this was admirably supplied by a somewhat withered and shriveled pumpkin, in which Mother Rigby cut 2 holes for the eyes and a slit for the mouth, leaving a bluish-colored knob in the middle to pass for a nose. It was really quite a respectable face. "I've seen worse ones on human shoulders, at any rate," said Mother Rigby, "and many a fine gentleman has a pumpkin head, as well as my Scarecrow." But the clothes in this case were to be the making of the man. So the good old woman took down from a peg an ancient plum-coloured coat of London make, and with relics of embroidery on its seams, cuffs, pocket flaps, and buttonholes, but lamentably worn and faded, patched at the elbows, tattered at the skirts, and threadbare all over. On the left breast was a round hole, whence either a star of nobility had been rent away, or else the hot heart of some former wearer had scorched it through and through. The neighbours said that this rich garment belonged to the black man's wardrobe, and that he kept it at Mother Rigby's cottage for the convenience of slipping it on whenever he wished to make a grand appearance at the governor's table. To match the coat there was a velvet waistcoat of very ample size, and formerly embroidered with foliage that had been as brightly golden as the maple leaves in October, but which had now quite vanished out of the substance of the velvet. Next came a pair of scarlet breeches, once worn by the French governor of Louisbourg, and the knees of which had touched the lower step of the throne of Louis le Grand. The Frenchman had given these small clothes to an Indian powwow, who parted with them to the old witch for a gill of strong waters at one of their dances in the forest. Furthermore, Mother Rigby produced a pair of silk stockings and put them on the figure's legs, where they showed as unsubstantial as a dream, with the wooden reality of the 2 sticks making itself miserably apparent through the holes. Lastly, she put her dead husband's wig on the bare scalp of the pumpkin, and surmounted the whole with a dusty 3-cornered hat, in which was stuck the longest tail feather of a rooster. Then the old dame stood the figure up in a corner of her cottage, and chuckled to behold its yellow semblance of a visage, with its knobby little nose thrust into the air. It had a strangely self-satisfied aspect, and seemed to say, "Come, look at me." "And you are well worth looking at, that's a fact," quoth Mother Rigby, in admiration at her own handiwork. "I've made many a puppet since I've been a witch, but methinks this is the finest of them all. 'Tis almost too good for a scarecrow. And by the by, I'll just fill a fresh pipe of tobacco, and then take him out to the corn-patch." While filling her pipe, the old woman continued to gaze with almost motherly affection at the figure in the corner. To say the truth, whether it were chance or skill or downright witchcraft, there was something wonderfully human in this ridiculous shape, bedizened with its and as for the countenance, it appeared to shrivel its yellow surface into a grin, a funny kind of expression betwixt scorn and merriment, as if it understood itself to be a jest at mankind. The more Mother Rigby looked, the better she was pleased. "Dickon," cried she sharply, "another coal for my pipe." Hardly had she spoken, than, just as before, there was a red glowing coal on the top of the tobacco. She drew in a long whiff and puffed it forth again into the bar of morning sunshine which struggled through the one dusty pane of her cottage window. Mother Rigby always liked to flavour her pipe with a coal of fire from the particular chimney-corner whence this had been brought. But where that chimney-corner might be, or who brought the coal from it, further than that the invisible messenger seemed to respond to the name of Dickon, I cannot tell. "That puppet yonder," thought Mother Rigby, still with her eyes fixed on the scarecrow, "is too good a piece of work to stand all summer in a corn-patch, frightening away the crows and blackbirds. He's capable of better things. Why, I've danced with a worse one, when partners happened to be scarce, at our witch meetings in the forest. What if I should let him take his chance among the other men of straw and empty fellows who go bustling about the world?" The old witch took 3 or 4 more whiffs of her pipe and smiled. "He'll meet plenty of his brethren at every street corner," continued she. "Well, I didn't mean to dabble in witchcraft today, further than the lighting of my pipe. But a witch I am, and a witch I'm likely to be, and there's no use trying to shirk it. I'll make a man of my scarecrow, were it only for the joke's sake." While muttering these words, Mother Rigby took the pipe from her own mouth and thrust it into the crevice which represented the same feature in the pumpkin visage of the scarecrow. "Puff, darling, puff," said she. "Puff away, my fine fellow. Your life depends on it." This was a strange exhortation, undoubtedly, to be addressed to a mere thing of sticks, straw, and old clothes, with nothing better than a shriveled pumpkin for a head, as we know to have been the scarecrow's case. Nevertheless, as we must carefully hold in remembrance, Mother Rigby was a witch of singular power and dexterity, and keeping this fact duly before our minds, we shall see nothing beyond credibility in the remarkable incidents of our story. Indeed, The great difficulty will be at once got over if we can only bring ourselves to believe that as soon as the old dame bade him puff, there came a whiff of smoke from the Scarecrow's mouth. It was the very feeblest of whiffs, to be sure, but it was followed by another and another, each more decided than the preceding one. "Puff away, my pet, puff away, my pretty one," Mother Rigby kept repeating with her pleasantest smile. "It is the breath of life to ye, and that you may take my word for." Beyond all question, the pipe was bewitched. There must have been a spell either in the tobacco or in the fiercely glowing coal that so mysteriously burned on top of it, or in the pungently aromatic smoke which exhaled from the kindled weed. End of cassette number 1, side 1. To continue, please turn the cassette over.
The lady sits at her own front door, as straight as the willow wand, and by there come a lusty smith with his hammer in his hand, crying, "Bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty smith will be your love, and he will lay your pride. Why may you sit there, lady fair, all in your robes of red? Why come tomorrow at this same time, I'll have you in me bed," crying, "Bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty smith will be your love, and he will lay your pride. Away, away, you coal blacksmith, would you do me this wrong? For to think to have me made an ebb, but I ever kept so long. I'd rather I was dead and cold, and me body laid in the grave, than an husky, dusky coal blacksmith me made an ed should have, crying, "Bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty smith will be your love, and he will lay your pride." So the lady, she curled up her hand, and she swore upon the mould that he'd not have her made an head for all of a pot of gold. But the blacksmith, he curled up his hand, and he swore upon the mass that he would have her made an head for the half of that or less, crying, "Bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty smith will be your love, and he will lay your pride." So the lady, she turned into a dove and flew up into the air. But he became an old cock pigeon, and they flew pair and pair, cooing, "Bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty smith will be your love, and he will lay your pride." So the lady, she turned into a mare as dark as the night was black. But he became a golden saddle, and he clung up onto her back, itching, "Bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty smith will be your love, and he will lay your pride." So the lady, she turned into a hare and ran all over the plain. But he became a greyhound dog, and he ran her down again, barking, "Bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty smith will be your love, and he will lay your pride." So the lady, she turned into a fly and fluttered up into the air. But he became a big hairy spider and dragged her into his lair, spinning, "Bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty smith will be your love, and he will lay your pride." So the lady, sheep turned into a sheep, a-grazing on yon common. Ah, but he became a big horny ram, and soon he was upon her bleating, bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty Smith Willoughby your love, he will lay your pride. So she turned into a full-dressed ship, and she sailed all over the sea. Ah, but he became a bold captain, and aboard of her went he, ordering, bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty Smith Willoughby your love, he will lay your pride. So the lady, she turned into a cloud, a-floating away in the air. Ah, but he became a lightning flash, and he zipped right into her.
Shocking.
Bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty Smith Willoughby your love, he will lay your pride. So she turned into a mulberry tree in the wood. Ah, but he came forth as the morning dew, and he sprinkled her where she stood, dripping, bide, lady, bide, for there's nowhere you can hide, for the lusty Smith Willoughby your love, he will lay your pride. So the lady, she ran into the bedroom, and she changed into a bed. Ah, but he became a green coverlet, and he gained her maidenhead. And once she woke, he took her so, and still he bade her bide, and the lusty Smith became a love for all of her mighty pride.
It was me and me father and my brother-in-law Nelson and Frank. We was topping up this lane, we used to call it Green Lane at Leatherhead. We was topping there with these wagons aside this fence. And we couldn't catch no rabbits in the daytime because there's plenty of keepers there, you see. I mean, we couldn't get out there in the day because everywhere you went, you'd see a yogger, keeper. So we went out there of a night time, moonlight night, and you could see the thread of the needle. And now and again you see these big clouds come over the moon and darken the moon, but when that cloud went over, you could actually thread a needle in the moonlight. And we could see plain. And I had an old dog named Spring, my father did. And Nelson had an old bitch named Nell. And we went out there with these dogs in the night time. There's plenty of rabbits and hares out there. And we'd catch several rabbits between us. These dogs haven't brought them back to us. And coming back across the bank, near enough to where this man was on this gate a few years before that when I was a boy, and in the same field, the gate leads down into the same field. And up on this bank, a rabbit jumped up. We thought it was a rabbit or hare. And it went across this bank, and Nelson's bitch Nell, she went after it. And we could see her gaining on it, right on it to sort of chop at it, to bite it. And as she did, this thing made a funny noise, you know, sort of funny noise. And the dog went, yow, 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 and we stood there and looked at it. And when we looked at it, the dog stood, and we stood looking. And this thing grew in a matter of seconds. From a sort of rabbit, as we saw in the first place, seen in the first place, up to a sort of person. And it had long fingernails, long nails. And it sort of had a long tail, like a horse's tail, sort of come from it. And it sort of got bigger and bigger, and Nelson, and we couldn't speak to one another for several seconds. And when we turned around and run, and got away, and we got home, we realised what it was. As we thought it was, I think it was I still say the day it was the same thing. I thought it was the devil.
Halloween parties are the real survival of the ancient merrymakings. No holiday in all the year is so informal or so marked by fun by both children and grown-ups as this one. On this night, there should be nothing but laughter, fun, and mystery. It is the night when fairies dance, ghosts, witches, devils, and mischief-making elves wander around. It is the night when all sorts of charms and spells are invoked for prying into the future by all young folks, and sometimes by folks who are not so young. The following descriptions will guarantee a truly authentic Halloween celebration. In setting up a Halloween party, everything should be prepared in secret. Even the invitations are to remain a mystery, with guests bound to not divulge the fact that they are invited. Often they are told to come masked as ghosts or witches. The invitations themselves should include images and shapes appropriate for the occasion, such as witch hats, cats, or pumpkins. If one is not an artist in watercolor painting, some of the invitation cards could be cut from colored Bristol board or heavy paper. The witches' hats of black or brown paper with a red ribbon band. The cats of black paper showing a back view may have a red or yellow ribbon necktie. The pumpkins of yellow paper with the sections traced in ink or notched a trifle and black thread drawn between the notches. Any of these designs could be used for an invitation to a Halloween party by writing on the reverse side, "Will you please come to my party on October 31st?" with the name and address of the host or hostess, using white ink on black paper. The decorations make plain the two elements of the festival, the harvest and darkness. The prevailing colors are deep yellow or orange and black. A deep yellow is the color of most ripe grain and fruit. Black stands for black magic and demoniac influence. Black and yellow cheesecloth and crepe paper make very effective and inexpensive decorations. The room, or rooms, in which most of the games are to be played should be decorated as grotesquely as possible. Ghosts and skeletons, symbols of death, startle the beholder. A skull and crossbones placed over the door entering the house would be very appropriate. An image of witches on broomsticks with cats, bats, and owls surmounts the fireplace, perhaps. A full moon shines over all, and a cauldron on a tripod holds fortunes tied in nutshells. It is to be made clear that this is a harvest party, like Pomona's feast. Corn stalks from the garden stand in clumps about the room. Autumn leaves, green branches, apples, tomatoes, and corn should also play an important part in the decorations. The hall should be in total darkness, except for the light coming from the jack-o'-lanterns of all shapes and sizes in various places. Jack-o'-lanterns are hollowed pumpkins with candles inside. They should be placed around on tables, mantels, and corners. In addition to pumpkins, jack-o'-lanterns may be made from apples, cucumbers, or squash, with incisions made for eyes, nose, and mouth. The candlelight shines through the holes, so the lantern becomes a bogey and is held up at a window to frighten those inside. Here comes a jack-o'-lantern to frighten you tonight, made from a hollow pumpkin with a candle for its light. Go off, you jack-o'-lantern, you cannot frighten me. You're nothing but a pumpkin, as anyone can see. Jack-o'-lanterns for lamp posts may be made of pasteboard boxes, about the size of a shoebox. Cut holes for eyes, nose, and mouth in all four sides of the box and cover the holes with red or green tissue paper. A black box with the openings covered with red tissue paper, or vice versa, or white and green make good combinations. Cut a hole in the bottom of the box, just large enough to fit over the light. Another suggestion is to have the hall totally dark with the door ajar, with no one in sight to welcome the guests. As they step in, they are surprised to be greeted by someone dressed as a ghost who extends his hand, which is covered with wet salt. Having marched to the dining room to the time of a dirge, the guests find before them plain, hearty fare: donuts, gingerbread, cider, popcorn, apples, and nuts honored by time. The dining room should be decorated with autumn leaves, goldenrod, yellow chrysanthemums, or a string of cranberries. For the centerpiece of the table, there may be a hollowed pumpkin with the top cut off and filled with apples and nuts and other fruits of harvest. Or the large pumpkin could be partly filled with water, in which a large bunch of yellow chrysanthemums or goldenrod could be placed. Bay leaves can be scattered over the table. One may also fashion a pumpkin chariot drawn by field mice. In the coach rides a witch, representing the other element of magic and prophecy. Some chocolate mice can be attached scampering down the sides of the pumpkin and over the table, held in place by long pins or other adhesive. Place cards representing pumpkins, black cats, witches' hats, witches, and brownies are appropriate. Brownies are small, industrious, and mischievous fairies or hobgoblins, believed in English and Scottish folklore to inhabit houses and barns. The dining room should also be in total darkness, except for the light given by the jack-o'-lanterns, until the guests are seated, when they should unmask.
Anna Conrad. On the edge of Grant Town, there stands an old 14-room house which nobody has lived in since 1946. The house looks like any other old empty house, but this one has a story behind it. The house was the home of Bert Conrad and his family of 10 children. In March of 1936, Anna Conrad, one of the children, was badly burned on her face, chest, and both legs. She spent 9 months in a Pittsburgh hospital. After she returned home, everybody was nice to her, but in a few months her brothers and sisters began to ignore her because she was a cripple and her face was ugly. She knew they were tired of her, so she moved her bedroom to one of the back rooms on the top floor. She had her meals brought up to her. She never left her room for 8 months, and then one night she decided to go downstairs. On her way down the second flight of stairs, she fell and hit her head. When she recovered the next day, she kept saying, "I have to go with her." Her parents couldn't understand what she was talking about, but when they looked out the window, they saw the footprints of a woman in the snow. And when they followed the prints, they found they led uphill to the family graveyard and stopped over Bert Conrad's first wife's grave. The parents were worried, and they locked Anna in her room. Then she became insane. She would scream and laugh at the same time. One cold March night, Anna took a fit, tore the door off its hinges, and started on a mad prowl through the house, breaking everything in sight. Her father grabbed her, but she broke his arm to free herself. She had acquired supernatural strength from somewhere. Then she returned to her room, and in a little while the frightened family heard her scream. When they got up to the room, they found Anna hanging by her neck from the light cord. She had killed herself. After this, both of the parents also lost their minds. Even today, people near the empty house on a windy March night can hear Anna's last scream. And nobody will live in the house because of Anna's screaming.
Calling all the witches and the warlocks too. 'Cause the goblins got a party going on for you. They're cooking up a batch of some magic brew. A 1,000 different potions are in store for you. Hear ye, one and all. You're invited to the Goblin's Ball. Hear ye, one and all. It's Halloween night at the Goblin's Ball. Hear ye, one and all. It's a Halloween night at the Goblin's Ball. Calling all the witches and the warlocks too. 'Cause the goblins got a party going on for you. They're cooking up a batch of some magic brew. 1,000 different potions are in store for you. Hear ye, one and all. You're invited to the Goblin's Ball. Hear ye, one and all. It's Halloween night at the Goblin's Ball. Hear ye, one and all.
Old Man Danica loved Halloween too well. In Corydon, Indiana, nobody went up to Old Man Danica's place alone on Halloween. You always took a friend. Halloween a few years ago, Paul and Laurie Royce, they went up that hill in the dark. They got to the top, and they were looking at the cornfield, and of course it was yellow and whispering kind of in the wind. Look at that, Paul. They could see the scarecrows. Danica had them all over the cornfield, and they were moving back and forth in the wind. And they knew one of those scarecrows was going to be Old Man Danica. Paul was in the 5th grade then, Laurie in the 3rd, so he went ahead. It's all right, Laurie. He went through those corn stalks until he got to one of the scarecrows that was moving. He touched it. It was just a scarecrow. It's all right, Laurie, come on this way. Laurie got kind of confused and lost in those corn stalks. She went over by a scarecrow and she could have sworn it was moving. She looked up at it. Happy Halloween! It's old man Danica. She was so frightened she ran as hard as she could through that cornfield to the dark house, and there was Mrs. Danica. It's all right. Come on, Laura. Come on. Oh, there, child. You never mind my husband. He gets crazy on Halloween. Paul, you come on in here, too. Now, come on. I'm going to give you some of the fat fudge, 2 pieces each now. It's all right. Well, they got that fat fudge, and it almost made it worth it. Almost. Danica come into his own house about 9:30 that night. He was wearing a ratty old tuxedo, and there was still sticks in the arms. He had straw coming out of the neck and the hands. You know, I'm sick of just being Scarecrow Danica out there. I want to go down the town, and I want to scare someone half to death, maybe more. Shut up, Clem, she said. Look at yourself. You look like a fool. Get that straw out of there, take a bath, and get into bed. You got to be the print shop early in the morning. She kept a tight rein on old man Danica, and everybody was glad of that. Well, she took sick in November, and she died. It was in January that Danica started walking around that print shop. He does the printing for the newspaper. They could hear him talking. Well, there's no one holding me back now. There's no one holding me back. Danica used to always sit on the liar's bench at noon, have his lunch and his hot tea. Didn't matter how cold it was. The liar's bench in Corydon, it must have been there 70 years. A couple of years ago, they tried to get rid of it because they were going to build a building. Well, there was a protest, and they moved the building instead of the liar's bench. Danica's always there at noon. He was sitting there one February day, noon, drinking the hot tea. A couple of fellas sat down. Cold, Danica. Oh, it's getting cold every day. What's headlines for tomorrow? Are you coming up my place on Halloween? What are you talking about, Danica? It's February. You come up my place on Halloween. It's going to be a burial. Well, it got so nobody would sit on the liar's bench when Danica was there, because all he talked about was Halloween. Of course, Bessie Meta, the widow, she'd sit there. She'd look at him and say, I don't scare easy, Danica. And Uncle Doctor, he went by one day. Danica's talking about a burial on Halloween, and Uncle Doctor leaned down and said, well, I'll have to sign the death certificate. Well, Danica kept sitting there talking about Halloween. Before you know it, the fall had come, and he's sitting on that liar's bench one October day. Paul Royce, in the 6th grade now, is going home. The liar's bench is in an alley right off the main street. Danica's got this big overcoat. Hey, Paul. Paul, come over here. Hello, Mr. Danica. I want you to take a picture of me. I haven't got a camera. I got the camera, Paul. I got a Polaroid here. Now you take it back up. Now, wait a minute. I'm gonna take this coat off. Danica was wearing a ratty old tuxedo underneath with straw coming out of the neck. All right, now wait, let me get the arms out. Now, wait, I gotta put this on. Danica, he picked up a pumpkin he'd hollowed out with a crazy smile on it, put it on his head. All right, take the picture, take the picture! I got it. Yeah, well, you're not going nowhere till we see how it comes out. Oh, come over here. Oh, it's coming out nice. You tell your father, come up my place on Halloween. It's gonna be a burial. Scarecrow Danica. I hope not. Well, I hope so, Paul. Now, goodbye. Paul went home and told his father what happened. His father, Fred Royce, made some calls, and parents decided no one was going up to Danica's unless they all went together. They'd make a party of it. Well, Halloween morning come, kids are running to school down the main street. We got those gas lanterns in Corydon still. The kids noticed that somebody had put pumpkins on the gas lanterns with a kind of crazy smile. In the cafe, people are reading the newspaper. On page 3, there was a big black border, and there was a tombstone. It said, Scarecrow Danica. Well, the editor, he called Danica's house, find out who put that in the paper. Danica, is that you? Somebody had picked up the phone. Danica? Danica? Whoever it was hung up on the editor. Halloween night. Must have been 70 people. They all went up together up to old man Danica's. They're all laughing and having a fine time till they got to the top of the hill and that corn is whispering in the breeze. People spread out and went through the cornfield, and they're jumping here and there, touching the scarecrows. None of them were Danica. Danica's house was in dark. It was Fred Royce who went up on the porch, and he knocked on the door. Danica! Happy Halloween, trick or treat! And all of a sudden, the place was on fire. Every room in the place was on fire. Everybody got back in the fire. It was a fierce fire, and you could look in the living room. There must have been 30 pumpkins, and they're all melting like they're made of wax. Everyone's getting back and back. They got the firemen up there, but there was nothing they could do. That place was burning too bad. They were going back and back away from that heat, back and back. And the little boy, he tripped over a tombstone. It said, Scarecrow Danica lies here. So the firemen come over and they kept digging till they came to it, a casket. Got the ropes underneath and they pulled the casket up. The fire chief, Fred Higgins, would you get the kids back? Would you please get the kids back? Bring the flashlights over here. All right, open up the casket. Open it up. Oh, my. Scarecrow Danica in here. He got that tuxedo on. He got a pumpkin on his head. Fire chief picked up the arm and said, "It ain't Danica at all. It's a scarecrow. It's nothing but a scarecrow here. You men, you stay here. When that fire's out, I want you poking through it. See if you find any bones. We don't know if Danica's alive or he's dead." Nobody did. They didn't find any bones. Well, of course, November come and Thanksgiving's on its way, so everybody forgot that, and getting busy as can be. It was Wednesday evening. That Bessie Meta, you know, the widow, she went out to the Baptist cemetery, put a wreath on her husband's grave. She started to tear up a little bit, took off her glasses, and she thought she heard something. She dropped those glasses. She's helpless without them, so she got down on her hands and knees. She's trying to find the glasses. She thought she heard them snap. She looked up behind the tombstone. She thought this black dog was coming at her. And she's looking at old man Danica's face. Oh, Bessie met her. She made it back to town, but she spent the next month in bed. People started looking over their shoulders. It was late March, cold as can be. Uncle Doctor, he came back late that night from the hospital in Louisville. He'd been at work 18 hours. He was glad to see the light on the drugstore. It's usually closed at 10 o'clock. Uncle Doctor went in. "Glad you're open, Russell. 62 years old. I'm too old for these days. I know you're in the back room. I can see a shadow there. You just finish up those prescriptions and I'll get myself one of these cheese crackers. And I'd like a hot cup of coffee." Uncle Doctor went over and sat down, opened up his newspaper, got one of those cheese and peanut butter crackers, ripped it open. Then he saw the coffee. It was being slid towards him. It was steaming, and somehow he just stared at that coffee, and he saw a man's fingers going right into the coffee, stirring it. And he looked up, and there's old man Danica, smiling at him. And Danica handed him a death certificate to sign. Uncle Doctor's frozen, and Danica just smiled and walked out the back. After that, we're all looking over our shoulders. I'm in the auto parts business, and I was driving home late one night. I take the low road, pretty lonely. Someone was hitchhiking, so I pulled over to pick him up. All of a sudden, his hands went straight out like he was a scarecrow. I pulled that wheel and nearly hit a truck coming the other way. I stepped on the gas. In my rearview mirror, I could have sworn it was old man Danica. Halloween come around again. We're all pretty edgy. Everybody saw the gas lamps. They had those pumpkins. Someone put them on the night. That Halloween morning, we're sitting in the cafe having coffee, and somebody had the Louisville Courier. Hey, look at this. Something about Corydon. Classified ad here. It says, one more time in Corydon, then I'm going town to town. Signed OMD. What do you suppose that is? It's Danica, that's who it is. It's Danica, it's old man Danica. Danica? Yeah, it's Danica. Crazy old man is coming back tonight. I'm keeping my kids in. Not many people went out for Halloween in Corydon that night. The Royces did, a few lively people. All the merchants, they kept everything open on the main street, so there's plenty of lights, and of course there were the houses along the side streets there. Jenny Robbins, she went out with the Royces. You know, Jenny, she's 10 and got those pigtails, and she's got enough freckles to cover a beach. She's a lot of fun. Well, Jenny ran by the drugstore, ran down the alley past the liar's bench because she was going to scare the Royces. She's halfway down the alley in the dark, and she's leaning against a lamppost that was all dark, and she thought it moved, and poor Jenny, she couldn't breathe. She reached back and touched it, and it seemed to be metal. And she managed finally to turn around. And it was just a lamppost. And she turned back, and she saw it hanging there. It was a man hanging by the neck. The Royces come running around and saw the figure hanging there, and out of the darkness someone jumped. Happy Halloween! The old man Danica laughing and running out the back of the alley. They cut the body down. It was nothing but a scarecrow in a ratty old tuxedo. This Halloween, when you go out, if I were you, I'd have a friend or two with you, because old man Danica's probably going to be in your town, hiding behind a tree, in a ratty old tuxedo, waiting. Happy Halloween.
My name's Wilfred Ishwood, and this soul-in job's been going on ever since I can remember. I've been mixed up with them from, well, actually taking part for about 32 years. My grandfather did it, my father did it, my uncles have done it, and I've seen in an old book where my great-great-grandfather actually drunk his soul-in cap, which was the last one that saw him off. That was the last a pint of gin and rum. And he could go on talking forever about this, but there's a lot of people who can't understand it because it's really our religion. We believe in soul-in, we believe in ghosts because we're supposed to be ghosts. Sometimes there's not many of us are real attenders at church because I think our belief is more sentimental and private, and we only turn out on All Hallows Eve. There's a younger gang in Antibus, the younger generation, and there's one or two of the old ones that's packed up. In fact, they've died, sorry to say. And we thought we'd better have another gang going to keep the tradition going. So we started this youth club. The boys that was at the youth club then, which are grown-up men now, and they're in the senior gang.
Well, my name is Mr. Collins, Reginald Collins. I'm a farmer's son, and I've been in the soul caking for about 5 years. As Mr. Ishwood has just told you, I was one of the younger generation, as he calls it. We started through the youth club. Of course, we had to go to the old gang for a bit of help. They gave us quite a lot of clothes for the job and quite a lot of information. But anyway, my part is I'm the horse driver, and I come in with the horse at the end of the play, and this horse, it is a real horse's skull with just one leg attached to it, and it is believed to be over 100 years old. And at one time there used to be quite a lot of gangs. There used to be a gang for each village, a gang of soul cakers. And the horse's head used to be the main thing. If they had no horse's head, they couldn't turn out. And if they used to meet, they used to fight and smash one another's horses' heads up so as to stop the other gang going out. Whoa, lad, whoa, stand still, lad, wait, whoa. In comes Dick and all his men. He's come to see thee once again. He was once alive, but now he's dead. He's now but a poor old horse, he said. So stand round, Dick, and show yourself. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just look around. Dad's never seen a finer horse on England's ground. He's double-ribbed, sound-footed, and a splendid horse in any gears. But by gum, ride him if they can. Whoa, Dick, whoa. But as you see, Dick's getting old. So we put this old bag on him to keep him from the cold. He's gotten more wrinkles in his forehead than there are for us in an acre of fresh blued ground. But he's still good, strong and sound. Whoa, lad, whoa. He's getting an eye like a hawk, a neck like a swan, a pair of ears like a lady's pocketbook, so read 'em if they can. Every time he opens his mouth, his head's ache off. Every tooth in his head stands rink, jink, and jank like a regiment of pickled onions. If they looks down his mouth, they'll see the dirty heels of his socks. Now, he's a very fine horse. He's very well bred. On Antrobus oats, this horse has been fed. He's won Derby and the Oaks and finished up pulling the now milk float. So stand around, Dick, and show yourself. Up, whoa, whoa, whoa. He's travelled high, he's travelled low, he's travelled through both frost and snow. He's travelled in the land of Icky Picky, where there's neither land nor city, where houses are thatched with pancakes, walls built with dumplings, streets paved with penny loaves, black puddings grow on apple trees and the pluck some as they want some. Little pigs run about with knives and forks sticking in the backs, crying out, "Who like me?" I said one and my horse another, so stand around it and show this house. Whoa, whoa, steady Dick, whoa, 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 lad, whoa. Now this horse was born on Antrobus Moss, where, as you all know, the crows fly tail fast. And just before he was found, they shot his mother to save her being drowned. Now he was fed night and day with a spoon, and at one time he could dance to any old tune. Up, lad, whoa. But now as the seas, Dick has only one leg, and with that leg he's forced to beg. And what he begs, it is but small, but that's obliged to serve us all. So now, all you kind ladies and gentlemen, I ask you all to open your hearts. We're collecting for Dick a new spring cart. Not one for him to draw, oh no, but one for him to ride in. And if they doesn't believe these words I say, ask these other chaps, they're bigger liars than me.
And not so much.
And now, Dick, show the obedience to the best friends. And now to the wasp. Whoa, 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 steady, whoa, let go, no, whoa. Whoa, whoa. And
Now our play is ended and we can no longer stay. But with your kind permission we will come another day. But before we go we'll have you to know, we'll have you to understand the great tour of England and the boys of the Antrobus gang.
A soul cake, please good missus, a soul cake. An apple, a pear, a plum or a cherry, or any good thing to make us merry. 1 for Peter, 2 for Paul, 3 for him that made us all. God bless the master of this house and the mistress also, and all your little children that round the table grow. Likewise your men and maidens, your cattle and your store, and all that dwells within your gates, we wish you 10 times more. A soul cake, please good missus, a soul cake. Apple, a pear, a plum or a cherry, or any good thing to make us merry. 1 for Peter, 2 for Paul, 3 for him that made us all. The lanes are very dirty and my shoes are very thin. I've got a little pocket I can put a penny in. If you haven't got a penny, a halfpenny will do. If you haven't got a halfpenny, then God bless you. A soul cake, please good missus, a soul cake. Apple, a pear, a plum or a cherry, or any good thing to make us merry. 1 for Peter, 2 for Paul, 3 for him that made us all.
Another spell not commonly tried now is winnowing 3 measures of imaginary corn, as one stands in the barn alone with both doors open to let the spirits that come in go out again freely. As one finishes the motions, the apparition of the future husband will come in at one door and pass out at the other. I had not winnowed the last weight clean out, and the moon was shining bright upon the floor, when in stalked the presence of my dear Simon Glendinning, that is now happy. I never saw him plainer in my life than I did that moment. He held up an arrow as he passed me, and I swarfed away with fright. But mark o' the end of it, Tib, we were married, and the grey goose wing was the death of him after it. Scott, The Monastery. At other times prophetic appearances were seen. Just as she was at the wark, what does she see in the moonlicht but her own coffin, moving between the doors instead of the likeness of a guidman? And as sure as death she was in her coffin before the same time next year. Anonymous, Tale of Halloween. Formerly, a stack of beans, oats, or barley was measured round with the arms against the sun. At the end of the 3rd time the arms would enclose the vision of the future husband or wife. Kale pulling, apple snapping, and lead melting, see Ireland, are social rites, but many were to be tried alone and in secret. A Highland divination was tried with a shoe, held by the tip, and thrown over the house. The person will journey in the direction the toe points out. If it falls sole up, it means bad luck. Girls would pull a straw each out of a thatch in Broadsea, and would take it to an old woman in Fraserburgh. The seeress would break the straw and find within it a hair the colour of the lovers to be. Blindfolded, they plucked the heads of oats, and counted the number of grains to find out how many children they would have. If the tip was perfect, not broken or gone, they would be married honourably. Another way of determining the number of children was to drop the white of an egg into a glass of water. The number of divisions was the number sought. White of egg is held with water in the mouth, like the grains of oats in Ireland, while one takes a walk to hear mentioned the name of his future wife. Names are written on papers and laid upon the chimney-piece. Fate guides the hand of a blindfolded man to the slip which bears his sweetheart's name. A Halloween mirror is made by the rays of the moon shining into a looking-glass. If a girl goes secretly into a room at midnight between October and November, sits down at the mirror, and cuts an apple into 9 slices, holding each on the point of a knife before she eats it, she may see in the moonlit glass the image of her lover looking over her left shoulder, and asking for the last piece of apple. The wetting of the sark sleeve in the south running burn where the 3 lards lands met, and carrying it home to dry before the fire, was really a Scotch custom, but has already been described in Ireland. The last Halloween I was a walkin', my drookit sark sleeve, as you ken, his likeness came up to the house stalkin', and the very gay breeks o' Tam Glen. Burns, Tam Glen. Just before breaking up, the crowd of young people partook of sowens, oatmeal porridge cakes with butter, and strunt, a liquor as they hoped for good luck throughout the year. The Hebrides, Scottish islands off the west coast, have Halloween traditions of their own, as well as many borrowed from Ireland and Scotland. Barra, isolated near the end of the island chain, still celebrates the Celtic days, Beltane and November Eve. In the Hebrides is the Irish custom of eating on Halloween a cake of meal and salt, or salt herring, bones and all, to dream of some one bringing a drink of water. Not a word must be spoken, nor a drop of water drunk till the dream comes. In St. Kilda, a large triangular cake is baked, which must be all eaten up before morning. A curious custom that prevailed in the island of Lewis in the 18th century was the worship of Shoni, a sea god with a Norse name. His ceremonies were similar to those paid to Saman in Ireland, but more picturesque. Ale was brewed at a church from malt brought collectively by the people. One took a cupful in his hand, and waded out into the sea up to his waist, saying, as he poured it out, "Shoni, I give you this cup of ale, hoping that you'll be so kind as to send us plenty of seaware, for enriching our ground the ensuing year." The party returned to the church, waited for a given signal when a candle burning on the altar was blown out. Then they went out into the fields and drank ale with dance and song. The dumb cake originated.
To raise the dead. Ingredients: spermaceti, lignum aloes, pepperwort, musk, saffron, red storage, blood of a lapwing. Preparation: compound the above items and fumigate them about tombs or graves of the dead. It will cause spirits and ghosts of the dead to gather together.
Very soft.
Oh, as soft as when you married me.
As soft as then. Did you steal oil from the holy chancel lamps that you keep the skin of a girl?
No such sacred vessel, Lord. A careless serving girl.
Hmm?
You know, Ursula, who combs up my hair for an hour or two every evening.
Oh, yes. That one.
She is usually attentive, not given to daydreaming, but last night she was careless. Her comb caught in my hair and hurt me badly.
You beat her, of course.
I struck her face until it ran blood.
Do as we do with lazy sentries. Set fire between their toes.
But listen, Ferenc, the skin of my arm has been growing drier and drier. Do what I would. The stupid girl's blood had drenched it. And as I rubbed to clean it...
Well?
Wherever the blood had touched, the skin grew soft and silky.
Let me touch it again.
Oh.
More gently this time.
Oh.
Oh, it is true. Like finest tissue of cafe.
Almost dawn.
A few minutes and the drums will sound.
A few minutes only. Lean your head against my arm.
The skin is as soft as a bride's.
Oh, my...
great and valiant a nobleman as your husband must be in heaven, must he not?
You dare to suggest he could be in any other place?
Never, lady, never. But you must remember those who kill themselves are instantly damned.
You...
It was a long time ago, back in the late 1800s. There was a family of 4, mother and a father, son and a daughter. They lived in the western part of the county, back in the foothills. The daughter was beautiful. She was 17 years old. Her hair was long and willowy, and it looked like sunlight on ripened grain. Her cheeks always had a red flush to them, but she used nothing for color, except every now and then when she'd go to a square dance, she might pinch her cheeks just a little. One May morning, the young girl took ill. Her cheeks lost their rosy color, and her skin, which used to be as white as the underside of a dove, it lost its glow, and her skin turned gray. The mother worked with the girl. She gathered herbs, boiled it into tea, and she gave it to her young daughter. But the girl seemed to get sicker. Her health was failing her, and by the morning sun, the girl was gone. Her spirit left her silently. Her mother was asleep in the early hours, and when she awoke, she saw the girl lying still on the bed. The mother rubbed her eyes to chase away the sleep, and she tried to see breathing, but there was none. The bed was quiet. The mother went over and she touched her daughter, and she felt a chill, cold, gray, damp feeling from the child, as quiet as the mood in the room. The mother walked over to the window, and she looked out. She stood there several minutes, watching the fog spin off in patterns. Then the tears came, and she could see nothing. Later, the father and the son took mattocks and shovels to the family graveyard, and they spent most of the day digging the grave. When they came back to the house, the mother was standing on the porch, and her eyes were pained with the tears of the day full of weeping. "We should use the old cedar box," she said, and she went back into the house. The father and the son climbed the loft of the barn, and they saw the cedar wood box. It was long and narrow. The father opened it. It was lined with cotton calico, lined completely underneath the lid, the sides, and in the bottom there was a feather tick and a feather pillow. The father stood on top of the loft and he lowered the box, and the son steadied it. And then they carried it together. When they got to the house, the mother said, "She's ready." And the girl lay still on the bed. She was dressed in a white gown. "I put my wedding dress on her," said the mother. "She's just the same size as I was then." The father and the son took the box to the family site, and they buried her. The father threw the last bit of dirt on the fresh mound, and then they returned to the house. The son was exhausted, and he went upstairs and he fell asleep. Then he was awakened by a scream, and he didn't know where it came from, and he looked about his room and he looked out of the window, but there was no moon, so he could see nothing. And then he thought of his sister. And then he heard another scream. It was fuller and louder and shattering, and he realized it was coming from downstairs. So he quickly dressed. And when he got down the stairs, he saw his father standing beside his mother. He had her hand in his, and he was comforting her and trying to get her to lay back down. The mother screamed again, and the boy felt chills shudder throughout his body. I know she's alive. I know she's alive. You must go get her. I hear her calling me. It's okay, Mother. It's okay. The father looked at the son, and his eyes were filled with fright. Go get the whiskey, his father whispered, and the son went into the kitchen. The mother screamed again. You must go dig her up. She's alive. I hear her calling. It's okay. She would not touch the whiskey, and the father and the son stayed with her through the long night. And when the day came, she was still screaming, begging, and pleading. Please, please, please go get her. The father turned to the son and he said, we must do it. We have got to show her, or she will never get better. The three of them slipped away into the morning. The father and the son dug the grave, and the mother stood above them, weeping and watching. The wind swept through her long gray hair and made shadows on the earth. Finally, the shovel touched the box. They worked ropes under it and pulled it up. And the father took the end of the shovel and he began to pry the lid. The very nails he had nailed down just the day before squeaked, and then they strained, but he worked the coffin lid loose. The father looked at the mother, and then he slowly lifted the lid of the coffin. The father dropped the shovel and he stepped back. The mother shook her head and the tears came heavier, and the son fell to his knees in the dirt. She lay quiet. Her dress was torn at the neck, and her face, no longer beautiful, was contorted and twisted with past pain. Her fingertips were covered with blood, and the end of her fingernails were gone. The calico cotton lining of the coffin was shredded, and there were fingernail marks deeply carved in the wood underneath. Calico.
Don't ever brag about what you do if you saw a ghost, or one will surely come. Don't slam the door because you might pinch some poor soul in it. Don't leave sharp knives lying around either, or some wandering spirit or ghost might get cut with them. Don't go looking over the graveyard wall. If you do, you will see ghosts. Don't laugh at ghosts. They are no joke. In Germany, they say, don't bring an elder branch into the house because ghosts will come in with it. If ever you come upon an old hat or a piece of clothing lying on the ground with a stick across it, don't pick it up. The stick is a sign that it belongs to a ghost. Don't touch it. Don't yawn without covering your mouth with your hand. Ghosts are attracted by yawning. Some people say they will peer in and count your teeth or your fillings. But a very common belief in the world is that your soul can slip out when you yawn, and some ghost can slip in. If this happens, you will sicken and die. Don't ever speak to a ghost unless you really want it to answer, because ghosts have to answer as soon as spoken to.
If the moon shines on the black pines, and an owl flies, and a ghost cries, and the hairs rise on the back, on the back, on the back of your neck. If you look quick at the moon slick on the black air, and what goes there rides a broomstick. And if things pick at the back, at the back, at the back of your neck, would you know then, by the small men with the lit grins and with no chins, by the owl's hoo and the ghost's boo, by the tomcat and the black bat on the night air, and the thing there, by the thing, by the thing, by the dark thing there. Yes, you do, yes, you do know the thing I mean, that it's now, that it's now, that it's Halloween! If the moon shines on the black...
World Series in the air, it goes right through me. Autumn everywhere, I love what it does to me. It smells so crisp, it smells so clean. I wanna take a run through the dying leaves, over the hills and through the woods. I never thought I could feel this good. Down by the pond and across the park. The sun goes down early, it'll soon be dark. October, October, I can't believe you're here. October, October, I feel you everywhere. I wanna go out to a public park, set down my amplifier, plug in my guitar, sing my songs as the colored leaves fall. Who needs drugs when we have fall? All of the people will gather around. They clap their gloved hands at this nutty clown. Surrounded by music, a pumpkin, apple cider. I'll stay out here while you warm up inside. Such a lovely day. Take a run in the rain. October, October, why don't you stay all year? October, October, I can't believe you're here. October, October, I feel you everywhere. October, October, I can't believe you're here. October, October, why don't you stay all year? October, October, I can't believe you're here. October, 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 October,
Come down to the willow garden with me. Come go with me. Come go and see. Though I howl across fields and my eyes turn gray, are yours still the same? Are you still the same? Carry home, I have returned through so many highways and so many tears. You let it never survive the heat of my hand, my burning hand, my sweating hand. Your love never survived the heat of my heart, my violent heart in the dark. Carry home, I have returned through so many highways and so many tears. Carry home to where I am from, carry to the place that I have come, carry to the dust and flies behind me, carry to the cracks and clays on the face of me. Oh, but I didn't change, I Come go with me, come go and see. I know I've howled across fields and my eyes turn gray. Are you still the same? Are you still the same? So carry home. I have returned through so many highways and so many tears. Yeah. Oh, but I didn't change. I just had to work. No, but I didn't change. I just had to work. And now I'm home. And carry home. You still want me now that I'm home.
Looking out the window and a witch flew by, whipping her brooms and she said you're gonna die, 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 die. Walking down the street, starting to cry, saw another boy, he said you're gonna die, honey, you're gonna die, honey, you're gonna die. So I went to my mother 'cause she doesn't lie. Took a look at me and said, you're gonna die. No, you're gonna die. No, you're gonna die. 'Cause you're much too young to live any older. You got the mark of death, that's why you're gonna die, gonna die, gonna die, gonna Looking out the window and a witch flew by, whipping her brooms and she said, you're gonna die, 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 die. Walking down the street, starting to cry, saw another boy, he said, you're gonna die, honey, you're gonna die, honey, you're gonna die. So I went to my mother 'cause she doesn't lie. Took a look at me and said, you're gonna die. No, you're gonna die. No, you're gonna die. 'Cause you're much too young to live any older. You got the mark of death, that's why